describing how to programmatically access and utilize the object schema. Describe the capabilities and use cases of formula fields. Describe the capabilities and use cases for summary rollup summary fields. Describe how to declare variables and constants in Apex and how to assign values with expressions. Describe the primitive and complex Apex data types and when to use them. Describe how to use and apply Apex control flow statements like ifs and loops and whatnot. Describe how to write and when to use Apex classes interfaces and interfaces. Describe how to use basic SOSL, SOCL, and DML statements when working with objects in Apex. Describe how to implement exception handling in Apex. All this covers half of the 46% of the exam. Very important. The other half will be covered on the next module. All right, let's go and take a look, first of all, at formulas and rollup summary fields. Formula fields. One very, very, very important piece of information that you must have, and you will always remember, you should remember, is that formula fields do not have values stored in the database.
Yeah.
A formula field will only store the formula, and the value will be calculated whenever the record is retrieved from the database. The value never gets saved, which is actually very, very important for a few things. For example, you could not use formula fields to check for duplicate records because the values don't get stored. So there's not going to be no record, no data in any of the records. Therefore, no knowledge of being a duplicate. Another very important piece of not being saved is that if you want to do a query and filter by a formula or a report and filter by a formula field, that formula needs to be evaluated for every single little record that you have whenever you query or you retrieve or you report on those. So they are really handy for once you have retrieved the record, show a calculated value, but not for any other type of operations. Now, a formula field will allow you to calculate the value when you read the record based on other fields in the record or other related records, as long as you go to the parents and parents and parent and parent 10 times. You can go 10 relationships away, which is actually a monster. Your schema will never have that. Well, should never have, if you design it properly, if you architect it properly, should never have that many layers. All right, cool. So here we have a formula which basically calculates the end date of a course delivery. We have the start date, and we add the duration from the parent record, which is the course_r.duration. Notice we're using _r for the relationship because it's a custom relationship, one that you built, and then duration _c, or start _c because it's a custom field that you created. So never stored, always calculated when you retrieve the record, and you can go up to 10 levels up, and you have to use the proper syntax, of course. Rollup summary fields. So with formula fields, you can go up. Up to how many levels? 10. With rollup summary fields, you actually go down 1 level. And what you're going to do is you're going to calculate the summary of your children. One single value that represents the summary of your children. Now, we're going from the course down to one level to the course deliveries. And what you want to do is you, in this particular example, you're going to count how many course deliveries you have. But in the bottom of that page, you are filtering where the status, the course delivery status, is equals to canceled. So you are limiting or counting a limited set of children, those who are canceled. Now, other than count, going back to the middle of the screen, you can do a sum or mean or max. Mean and max can be to retrieve values from numbers and or dates. What was the earliest date? What was the latest date of the schedule? What was the latest date of the course that was canceled, for example? What was the earliest date for the class that was, for the delivery that was canceled? Now, for numbers, you can sum your number field. So if each delivery has a number of students, like this is, today we are having 460 students, and yesterday we had, Monday we had, I think it was a little bit higher, I think it was around 500 something students. Then if you sum, you're gonna get over 1,000 students that I trained this week. All right, cool. So that's basically a roll-up summary field. Roll-up summary fields, a couple more things. So, one more point important, because I think there's a question on the exam on this. You can only do count, sum, mean, max. That's all the operations you can do. You cannot do average. You cannot do standard deviation. You cannot do anything else. Just sum, mean, max, and count. All right, count the number of records, and for number fields, sum, and for number and dates, mean and max. All right, now these values are calculated whenever the detail changes. Oh, I forgot to mention that part. You can only create a roll-up summary field using master detail relationships. And there is a handful, like 3 different exceptions to this, which are on CRM objects, accounts, and campaigns, and campaign member, and product line item, and whatnot. Make sure you go through that list, very short list on your on Trailhead or something. All right, good. So whenever, in this particular case, this particular screen, this particular example, we're counting how many deliveries were canceled and storing that value in the course. I did say store because the value does get saved to the database, unlike formula fields. Roll-up summary fields do get saved. Formula fields do not get saved. And they get saved whenever you update a course delivery. When in this particular case, in this particular string, if I was going to change a delivery to canceled, then the course will have to save itself with the result of this formula. If I was going to remove a class, a delivery, or add a delivery with the status of canceled, the course will also have to be modified. And we're going to talk about that very, very important fact when we cover the order of execution towards the middle of the day. All right, couple of checks. Let's see if you guys are following along. AW Computing uses the certification held object to track if a service technician contact. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me rewind. This is a very, very good example of certification questions. And this is kind of what I want you to think of when you are going through these particular questions, which are very long questions. A lot of words. So this is the way, if this was a question on certification exam, this is the way that I would uh, attempt it or answer it. Can I read it? AW Computing uses the certification held object. Stop. Right there, we're talking about an object, certification held. Before I do anything else, I'm gonna take the piece of paper because yes, you are allowed to have some paper on the exam. And if you take the exam, you will be provided with, on a site, you will be provided with this paper and pencil. So you can draw pictures, pretty pictures. I would draw one box and call it certification held. Okay, so continue. To track if a service technician contact has passed the certification. All right. There is a master detail relationship between the contact object, master, and the certification held object, detail. Stop. Go back to your piece of paper, draw another box for the contact, and draw a line between those two. And which one is the master and which one is the detail? Well, it says here, there's a master detail relationship between the contact and certification. Contact cannot be a detail because it is a standard object. We know that. But also they're telling us the contact is the master and the certification is the detail. So now draw the three lines to indicate that the certification held is the detail. Continue. The professional services team wants to track the total number of certifications held by each service technician contact. The professional service team, a people, a person, a guy, lady, sorry, a dude or a dudette, wants to track, wants to have the total number of certifications in the contact. So they want to have a number in the contact object that represents how many children that, or how many details that master has. How can a developer meet this requirement? Easy, roll-up summer field. Where do you put the roll-up summer field? Roll-up summer field goes on the parent. So you're going to go to the contact and you're gonna create a roll-up summary field. You're gonna count the number of certification held objects, possibly, although I don't think that's the case right now, limiting which children or which details are accounted for. And then you're gonna have 4 different options and you have to choose the one that corresponds to what you just thought the question was asking you about. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's do another example of that same thing. AW Computing populates the industry field on the customer account record. Stop. There is an object called account. Draw a box, has an industry field, put that industry in there. The sales team wants the industry information displayed on the related opportunity. Stop. There is another object called opportunity. Draw a line. Now, don't write the whole thing, account and opportunity on the exam. Write an A and an O or whatever. I mean, that's, you know what you're talking about. But writing account and opportunity will take you too much time. And remember, there's not a lot of time on these exams. So make the charts not pretty, fast, but make it work for you for that particular question. After this question, that chart doesn't probably mean anything else anymore. So you do not need to make a pretty picture. Anyways, so one box account, one box opportunity. Knowing Salesforce, we know that an account can have multiple opportunities and that these two things are lookup relationships. Okay, so draw one line, it's a lookup relationship, it cannot be a master detail. All right, the sales team wants the industry information displayed on the opportunity records and updated whenever is a value on the account is, when the value is updated on the account record. Now, this one is a little bit tricky. Can we create a formula on the opportunity, formula field on the opportunity, that will bring information about the industry field from the account? Absolutely. Opportunity is a child, account is the parent. There's a field in their industry, so we can just basically add a field on formula field on the child that that brings the industry. Now, here's the part that is kind of tricky. The sales teams wants the industry information displayed on the related opportunity. So can we have that formula field calculated whenever we have a, whenever we bring the opportunity to the screen, will that formula field will be calculated so that it displays the correct industry? Absolutely. And here's the tricky part. Updated when the value is updated on the account record. Do formula fields save data to the database? No. Will they be updated? Well, no, if they don't get saved. But if you kind of think a little bit, what they're asking you here is when you read the opportunity, anytime with any mechanism, either a SOCO query, even exporting data through the Apex on the screen, will that value will be reflected, the updated value, whenever I read the opportunity? And the answer is yes, because that value will always display the current field, the current value of the industry field. Okay, so hopefully that kind of gives you a little idea on those long questions. Make pictures. Make sure you understand every single word that is being asked. Make sure that you fully get a grasp, because that's where they're gonna get you. Is not reading the question properly, not understanding basics. They're gonna ask you questions like, do formula fields get saved? No, they don't. But they're not gonna ask you that. They're gonna ask you to apply that knowledge. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier when I was saying that don't worry about the governor limits numbers. Make sure you are able to apply that knowledge on a question. This is a typical question for that. All right, so moving on, we're now going to start talking about Apex. What is Apex? Well, good question. I'm glad you asked. Apex is a Salesforce cloud-based, object-oriented programming language, specifically designed for customizing and extending applications on the Salesforce platform. Apex is a Salesforce cloud base. It runs, it compiles on the cloud. Now, you may write it on your client, especially tools like VS Code nowadays that allows you to create code on your local server. But in order to run it, you will be able to run it, compile it, and run it on the server. It's an object-oriented programming. So we know classes, constructors, instances, in interfaces, abstract classes, virtual classes, polymorphism, overriding, overloading, all that stuff. We know all that stuff. It's a truly object-oriented programming language. It is designed for customizing and extending applications on the Salesforce platform. That basically means working with data as a database. Treat Salesforce as a database, and Apex will be the tool that you can use to work with that database. So it is tailored for data access and manipulation, which means it's not really a good tool if you want to build a native desktop application that it's a video game to shoot aliens. You can't do that on with Apex. There's a lot of better tools for that. Now, in order to keep the scores or anything to keep that information in the database, maybe the powers of each of the characters or something, you want to keep the database for that, you could definitely use Apex on that part, but not to build the 3D animations and whatnot. All right, it works in conjunction with the declarative features. As we're gonna see in the next slide, when you create a custom object, when you create a custom field, Apex has immediately access to those objects and those fields because it has access to your metadata. It also, if you create a record and if your custom invalidation fails, the record will be prevented from saving. If you have some workflows or processes, those will run whenever you insert the record. So it works in conjunction with declarative features. And last but not least, very important, it is designed to work effectively and efficiently in a multi-tenant environment. So, as I mentioned before, whenever you create a new object, whenever you create a new field, you can start using them automatically on your code. You do not need to do anything fancy to start using them because Apex knows about your Salesforce data. Now, if you were to actually create variables inside Apex, you could have them with different data types. Blobs, booleans, date, time, decimal, double, and blah, 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 blah. A gazillion of different classes, primitives that you can use. All right, now, important piece of information, which kind of makes, this is one of those things that makes Apex a little bit weird. All the values on your primitives, all the values on the primitives could have a value of null if you have not assigned a value to it. For example, and this is one of those weirdness. You can do boolean b semicolon. What's the value of b? Is it true? Is it false? Is it null? Is it error exception because you didn't define it? No, it is actually null. So technically, a Boolean has 3 different values. A Boolean can be either true, or false, or blank, or null, or not a value. Be very careful with that. All right, cool. Next. Okay. Final is the keyword that we use in Apex to declare constants. Those are things that cannot change the value. Once you assign it, you cannot change the value to that. And there are several pieces. There's 2 important places where you can assign the values to, and only to. You cannot assign it anywhere else. One of them is when you define the value here. All right, collections. In Apex, we have 3 types of collections. We have a list, we have a set, and we have a map. And we do not have any other type of collection. So, what are the possible? What is the difference between a list, a set, and a map? A list is an ordered, therefore indexed collection of elements with potentially duplicate values. If we have a list of accounts and we instantiate that to a new list of accounts, basically we now have a list that has 0 elements, and we add 2 accounts.
What? Oh.
We can find what is on account bracket 0 or bracket 1, or we could do get 0. Now, this looks like an array, but do not let that confuse you. We do not have arrays in Salesforce. We have the array notation, but it's not an array. In other programming languages, an array cannot grow, cannot shrink. In Salesforce, we can actually make them larger or make them smaller. So there's no an array. 2, if we were doing account 1 and account 1 duplicate values, then when you add them, you have both of them because you can have duplicates. And you can ask for position 0, you can ask for position 1, etc. That's a list. A set, second block. We're going to define a set named names, which is a set of strings. And we instantiate that when now we have an empty collection. And we add Acme, and we add Salesforce, and we add Salesforce. Now, with the set, one of the things that we can do is check to see if it contains Pardot. And of course, it will not contain Pardot. It will only contain two elements, Acme and Salesforce. Well, two elements? Yeah, if we check the size, it will be two. But if we added three, in a set, there are no duplicates. So once you add an element that was already there, it will say, oh, okay, I won't do anything else because I already have it. Now, if we ask from names, what is at position 0? It will turn around with an exception saying, excuse me, what's the position? Because it is not ordered, therefore not indexed. And it cannot contain duplicates. The third type of collection that we have is a key value pair where each key corresponds to a single value. The way you define that is we have a map of string and value. Then we instantiate that with a new map. And we put, yes, we don't add, we put on a map key, value, key, value, key, value, key. Oh, wait, hold on. I already had that key. It was 200. Okay, I don't care. It is 600 now. So where did the 200 go? It went to a Neverland. It just disappeared. So the size of this map is now 3 elements. We put it 4 things. Well, you used 3 keys. You put the 4th one into the first key. That's all right, but you overrode that. Then we can ask, does it contain the key Acme? Yes, it does. And then get me the key Acme, and it will display you a value of 600 because that's the one that you have right now. Now, this topic of collections is actually so important that I'm going to do a little demo for you guys. So I'm going to, let's see, stop here, go to here, hopefully it's still alive. I signed in this morning just before the session started. All right, and I'm gonna go to the developer console.
I have the data.
Once I have here, let's close that. Once I have the developer console, I'm gonna go to debug, open, execute anonymous window, or you can do Control E, or in Mac, Command E. That opens this little window here. I'm going to copy from the slides. Copy. Paste. One of the code that we just took a look at. So it's a set of names. And we're going to add Acme, Salesforce, and Salesforce. Does it contain Pardot? Does it contain Salesforce? And then, what's the size of the collection? The size of the collection is name size. If I do this checkbox checked, it will automatically open the logs as soon as I click the execute button. Shows me the full log. I can filter for the system that debugged statements. Not too much. All right. So, and then, does it contain Pardot? No. Does it contain Salesforce? Yes. What's the size of the collection? 2. Didn't you add 3 elements? Yes, but it was a set. Had this been a list, let me unzoom a little bit more. Had this been a list, the same code, check on debug only. Does it contain Pardot? No. Does it contain Salesforce? Yes. What's the collection number? Here we have a 3. Here we have a 2. Why? Because a list has duplicates.
But
the set does not
collection
have
says
duplicates.
do not.
All right, good. So let me back to normal Zoom, back to PowerPoint. Let me double check that you guys are actually seeing the demo sets. Demo, you are, so we can continue. And if you're not, Eric will yell at me and let me know that you guys are not seeing it. We'll talk about conditionals, if else, and loops. And loops, we have several versions, or several flavors of loops. We have a while, a do while, and 3 different types of for loops. You guys should be familiar with an if and an if else, and it works exactly the same thing as any other language. You get a boolean, then it executes a piece of code, or the other piece. Done. Difference between while and do while functions. So this is what a while loop. This is what a while loop looks like. While something that is true or not, then you're going to iterate over this, probably incrementing the iterator, and every time you're going to check the condition. If it is not longer true, then it executes the next line. The do while is kind of similar, except that the condition comes at the bottom once you have at least once through this code once. If this is never true, you will never execute this code. But in a do while, because the condition is tested at the end, it has already done at least once. All right. Now, for the for loops, we have 3 flavors of for loops. We have the traditional for loop. We have a for that iterates over a list or a set of elements. And we have a for which iterates over the results of a SQL query. When I talk about traditional for loops, this is basically what I mean. For iterator equals 0, iterator less than 3 numbers, and then increment the iterator at the end of the loop, and inside of that I do whatever is done. If I have a list of collection, like a list or a set, I could do the second type of loop, which is for each integer I in the list of 3 numbers, look through them and process them. Now, again, I'm going to jump into demo mode, and I'm going to execute a little bit of code for you. So let me go to here, and we're going to execute a new code, so I can clear this. Going to paste this code here, probably make this window a little bit bigger. A little bit. Then I'll zoom in. All right. So I have a list of, it's called 3 numbers. Guess why? How many numbers am I going to add to that list? Absolutely 3. That's why we call it 3 numbers. I'm going to get the size, which is basically by invoking the method size on 3 numbers, and this should give me a value of 3. And the iterator is a variable that I'm going to declare and assign the value of 0. If 0 is less than 3, then I'm going to print with the system.debug statement each of the numbers. So it should say 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to increment the iterator so that the next time it does it again, and it does it again, and it does it again, until the iterator is not less than 3 number size. So when the iterator is equals to 3, 3 is less than 3, no, then we're gonna skip over. Otherwise, you will not be able to put a 3 in here and ask for the value of this, because the numbers are on, the indexes are only 0, 1, or 2, not 3. Although it has 3 elements, we start counting on 0. All right, so that's this while loop. The second for loop is the traditional for iterator equals 0. I'm going to initialize this before I go into a loop. I'm going to check to see if the iterator is less than three number size. If it is, I'm going to print this line. After I go through that, I'm going to increment the iterator. And then I go back and check to see if this is still valid. If it is, I execute this. If it is, and at the end, I incremented and I incremented and I incremented until the iterator, which is the thing that I just incremented, is not less than 3 number size. Last but not least, I am going to use the other type of for loop, which loops through a collection of elements, in this case, a list of elements. And I'm going to call each of the elements in that list is going to be named I. And then with the list for iteration, I'm just going to print that number. I don't have to get the number as I did here. I do not have to get the number as I did here, because this loop is already doing that for me. All right, so if I run this, and I check on the debug only, and I zoom it so you guys can see it. The loop while iteration 1, 2, 3. For loop 1, 2, 3. List loop 1, 2, 3. They do exactly the same thing, obviously, but they are written in a slightly different way. All right, let's zoom out and we go back to slide here. All right, cool. What about getting data out of a database? Well, you have two ways to get data. One of them is using a you have two ways of getting the data out of there. One of the is SOQL, the other one is a SASL. SOQL is Salesforce Object Query Language. It will allow you to retrieve the data from the database using something that looks similar, not the same thing, but very close to it, a SQL query, where you specify which fields you want to get back, where you specify which object you're looking data into, and you can specify a few more things. Apex will be able to run your SQL queries if you put them inside a square bracket, just like this. Okay, good. So here, in this particular example, if you know SQL, you should be able to identify that you are actually going to be returning the case number from the case object, but you do not get a list of strings, although it's only one single element that you're returning. What you're getting, it is a list of records with a case number populated. There is also one more field that you will always get for free, and that is the ID. So the case that is being returned, or the cases that are being returned, each of them will have two different values, the ID and the case number. You have to specify the fields that you want to request. If we take a look at the syntax between your fields, you're going to have field 1 and field 2 and field 3. So you have to specify the fields that you want to get back. Then you specify from which object you want to bring those fields. You can have things like a where, limit, group by, offsite. You can have a lot of different things in there. There is a very good document which lists all the possibilities that you have. And I'm going to go to Google and find a bookmark. No, books, where's books? Where would I SOCO and SOSL. This book here, if I go back to this thing here, and SOCO and SOSL book. Friends. All right, cool. Let's move all these. Okay, so make sure you go through that book there. Oh, I just realized I'm not posting this to the group that I should be posting it to. Hold on. What is this? Cohort. Can I do that? Yes. Comment. And comment.
I just posted it on this.
Thanks, Eric. All right, so, all right. Now, when you do a where, you can specify several different operators. One of them is equals, not equals, greater than, less than, greater than or equals, less than or equals. You got the like, which is like your wildcard search. Then you have in and not in. This is a very cool shorthand of writing a lot of ors. So where city equals Toronto, or city equals San Francisco, or city equals Atlanta, or city equals Germany, or city equals Sydney, or you can just do the in operator, which is city in, and you say in Toronto, San Francisco, Atlanta, Berlin, and Sydney, and whatnot. All right, cool. Or not in. Give me the records that are not in that particular list. The next operator includes and excludes. It's for searching if the value of a pick list, it's one of the values that was a multi-select pick list. It's one of the values that was selected by the user when they were entering the record. Now, because of the way the multi-select pick list values are actually saved into a database, they are basically saved as one string of semi-comma separated values. It kind of makes it really hard to do a text search to see if the values was actually selected or not. So Salesforce created a includes and excludes operators for those. And then of course we have the and, the no, the and, or, and not logical operators for creating complex Boolean logic in your SOCO queries. All right, cool. And the book that I just shared with you on the cohort group has all the different operators and all the different syntax that you can use for your SOCO queries. Now here's another demo of something really cool that you can do with the developer console. So what I'm gonna do, I go here to the developer console, and I need to have, actually I don't think I need to have this one. Oh, I do, hold on. Because I need the query editor. All right, I'm gonna select the object case. I can type here case, much faster. Case. And here gives me a list of my fields, and I can sort them by the name. And I can start selecting the ID, and I can select the case number, and I can select the subject. And if I click on the query button, any other fields? Nah. If I select on the query button, it will bring me this query, and then I can execute that query, and it will bring me 102 cases and it will give me the fields, the ID, case number, and the subject fields in there. It's really, really cool, handy tool, especially the fact that you can easily pick different fields that you want to do in here. All right, so let's go back to the slides. You guys seen the slides? Yes, okay, good. Oh, hold on. Let me actually expand a little bit on the previous thing, previous demo. All right, I'm gonna keep this open for a minute. How do you use this circle in Apex? So I'm gonna open the developer, the execute anonymous window. I'm gonna start typing. I'm a horrible typist, so if I make any mistakes, please bear with me. Cases equals, and remember with the square brackets, you're gonna paste the statement that you just wrote, and then we can have a for loop, cases C on cases. Oh, actually, see, I already started typing wrong. This is the data type. This case C on cases. I'm going to display system.debug C dot nothing. I'm just gonna display C. All right, so if I run this and I select only the debug only, I'm going to see the information for my cases where I have the ID, the case number, the subject, and some other fields you get for free, but let's not worry about those ones too much. The ID is the one that you actually do get for free. All right, so if you scroll through them and you count in 102 records displayed. All right. Now, and this is the reason I want to have this one open here. I'm going to do where subject is equals to printer jump. Looking for these records here. All right. Then I can do execute. When it opens, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 records where the subject is equals to printer jump. Okay, because I filter for that. Now I could, and let's imagine for a minute that somehow the users are entering in a Visualforce page or landing component or whatnot. We'll talk about the UI in a bit. We're just talking about backend. But let's suppose that somehow they enter in a form the word printer jam that they want to look for, and I'm going to capture that into a variable, and I'm gonna cheat on that part, and I'm gonna say user wants printer jam. Oh, double quotes. Printer jam. And this variable can be used here by preceding it. Oh, no, sorry, I pasted the wrong thing. User wants with this. And I run that. And once it's run, I should get exactly the same 6 records that I got here. But had the user entered something else, like laptop screen, I do not have to change my code because I'm referring a variable or using a variable, binding a variable with this double, not double dot, sorry, it's called, how do you call that thing in English? A colon, with a colon preceding the variable name. And when you execute, click on debug, You get not the same 6 records, you only get 3 records, of course. Okay, obviously. All right. So if you want to be able to have different values for the same filter on the same object and retrieve the same fields, you can just easily do that with a variable binding using the colon character. But if I wanted to change the whole thing, so I don't always look for subject equals whatever value, but sometimes I look for case number equals whatever. Sometimes I look for ID equals whatever. So I'm changing the actual whole filter rather than just the value of a filter. I cannot use this syntax. I have to use something which is actually called a dynamic SOCL query. In a dynamic SOCL query, you are going to do database.query, and you're going to pass a string that corresponds to the SOCL query. And because this is string, you can actually modify it or append things like criteria status equals working, criteria equals close days less than 2 days. So I'm changing the whole filter. I need a dynamic SOCL query. Not just for the value. Sometimes I was looking for status working or not working or close or open. I can use the variable thing, but I'm actually changing the whole filter or bringing different fields or from a different object. I will have to work with a dynamic SOCL query. So that's basically SOCL. Let's step back for a minute and take a look at what SASL is, which is the second mechanism in which you can actually look for data or retrieve data from your database. And the SASL in this particular case is going to be more like a Google search, where you're going to look for specific words, and any record that has that word somewhere, you can it will be able to be found. Okay, so let's go through the syntax here, because the syntax for SASL is a little bit strange. First thing, we do not do select, we do a find. Actually, just for a little bit, little pause, a little parenthesis here. Remember that we do not, that we only have selects and finds on our query languages. In other languages like Postgres or Oracle, SQL Server, or whatnot, you got a gazillion different query languages or query verbs, I guess. Not only select, but you also have insert, update, delete. You also have create tables, create indexes, drop table, all that stuff. We do not have all of them. The only thing that we have is select and find. So you cannot make changes to your records using SOCL or SASL. But you have other mechanisms, which are the DMLs, which we'll talk about a little bit later today. So going with SASL, you only have the find keyword. You're gonna look for something called ACME. So any record that in any field has the word ACME will be found. ACME Incorporated. The company name is ACME, that will also be found. ACME, oh, actually, the company ACME is a really cool company, that would also be found. So it will find any words that match the word that you are looking for. You can also do ACME star, so find records with the words that start with the particular prefix. Now, in which fields you want to look for, because you can look only on the name fields, or you can look in all fields, or only phone fields, or only email fields. So which fields you want to look for? And that's the green box in all fields. In which objects you want to look, and that's the purple. Let's suppose that's purple. We're gonna look for, in the purple, it's gonna look into the account and opportunity. So you're looking for multiple records and multiple objects by the keywords, or not the keywords, but by the words that it contains. And what it returns, it is a list of lists of S objects.
A list of lists.
And in this particular case, we're going to create a variable called acmes, which the data type is a list of S objects, or basically of records. Acmes brackets 0, it is a list of accounts that match the word Acme. Acmes bracket 1, it is a list of opportunities that have the word Acme. Acmes bracket 0, let me actually go here. This is what I'm talking about. Acmes bracket 0 is a list of accounts. Bracket 1 is a list of opportunity. Bracket 0 is a list of accounts. Bracket 0 is the first account, the first record in this list. Because Acmes 0 is a list of accounts, this will be the first account that we actually find. It's a list of lists. Oh gosh, I shouldn't have done. Sorry, I shouldn't have done this, but hopefully you're able to read it. Not sure how big it comes in your screens. But basically, this is what I'm talking about. Bracket 0 and bracket 0, that brings the first record on the first list. All right, so let me zoom out again. Let me go to PowerPoint. All right, so it's a list of lists. Had I flipped these two around, would it say returning opportunity, comma, account? Then brackets Acmes 0 will be opportunity, because I just flipped them around. Okay, so it's in the order in which you list them there. So let's take a look and see if we are actually able to get these questions answered. You want to count the number of records that meet the criteria. For this, you have to do a cycle. Select count from case where whatever. You cannot do count with SOSL. You want data from one object and multiple related objects. You can go to the parents, you can go to the children. That will be with SOSL. You cannot bring the relationships on SOSL. You can bring multiple objects, bracket 0 and bracket 1 and bracket 2, but those will not be consistent on that or persistent that relationship that you have defined on your schema. Now, you don't know which object or field the data resides on. I want to look for something that says Acme regardless of where that thing resides. That is using SOSL. You want to sort results as part of the query. You can do order by in either SOSL or SOSL. And you want look for data based on numbers, dates, or checkboxes, or whatever else, not necessarily text fields. That is going to be only on SOSL. Now, SOSL really makes sense only when you're building custom user interfaces. Actually, in Salesforce, this search bar here, which looks for Acme, it brings a list of accounts and contacts. So you have, this is basically doing a SOSL. And all right, let's see this record. Actually, let's do something. Let's do LA. So this is return accounts and contacts and people and reports. Now, if you go to any one of these, let's go to this. Let's go to an account, and let's look for the word LA. It appears 6 times. This is actually what you are, the reason you are returning this record is because of this word law in the address of that, or maybe even this word. It's not because it says laboratories. You have to do lab star to be able to find the laboratories. All right, cool. Now, there's also a really cool use case for that is when you're building custom interfaces. You may have seen this blog before, and I look for words here, and it finds me the articles that have the Salesforce word and the security word in there. This is using Sazzel as well. All right, cool. So that's basically the use case for Sazzel. Is when you want to build user interfaces. All right, so what about